Hey guys, it's Baileywiki, and it's February of 2024. This is the big release date. There's a lot in this. I absolutely love this release. There's so much in this release. I could make scenes for a year and not fully use everything that's come in this release. There's just a lot of creativity that opens up. They've got a lot of cave systems. We've got new systems for building ruins, and we're going to be expanding on that. We've got all sorts of stuff from a 2D perspective for both VTT and also for Dungeondraft. So all the things that you're seeing here, they came from Dungeondraft assets that are also available to you, so you can come in and see how we built these things and build your own. We also have, from a 3D perspective, some great new scenes. We had a contest, as you know, recently, and the winners of that contest are actually working on the 3D team now, building amazing stuff. And we've been collaborating here already. You're going to see more next month, but we've already got a couple of early examples from some of that team. And then Swift has been hard at work making prefabs that you can just do a ton of cool stuff with, like making castles really quickly, kind of consolidating pieces into larger prefabricated components that you can just slap together. It's never been easier to make castles and drop things like that into scenes. So with that, we also have a little bit of organization change. So make sure you watch up front from Zephyr some of that information. And otherwise, I'm excited to show you the rest of the release. So first up, where you're going to find the new assets, if we open up our modules and we search for Baileywiki, the 3D asset pack is updated. That's for advanced tiers. The maps premium pack and towns are both updated. And then the District 04 ruins and slums is also updated. Also updated is nuts and bolts. So make sure you get all of those updated, and it will download all of the compendium updates and tiles and sounds that you're going to need for this release. Before I continue, I'm going to segue to Zephyr, who's going to talk about how the compendiums have been updated and reorganized.
In addition to all of the new content this month, we've also made some organizational changes to our Foundry modules. If you're using Cabal Dungeon and the City District modules, you'll notice that you no longer have dedicated scene compendiums for city scenes or dungeon scenes. And also, the Baileywiki Maps Premium Towns Scenes compendium has been rebranded to Baileywiki Modular Scenes. We've now moved all of the city scenes and dungeon scenes within this same compendium. Since many of these scenes rely on assets throughout our module library, we thought it best to combine all of this into a single compendium to make the browsing experience easier for you when you're trying to find specific scenes. This means that you'll no longer have to have dungeons or cities active in order to access all of their content, as all of their prefabs and all of their scenes are now housed within towns. You'll still need to have them installed for the artwork and sounds, but you won't need them for compendiums anymore. And you can navigate through the different folders to see all of the different scenes that are available and search for them. You'll also notice on the prefab side, if Baileywiki Maps Premium Towns, which houses all of the 2D prefabs except for those in Maps Premium, that there is now, instead of a total of 6 compendiums, with 0 being new content and then 1 through 5 being other pieces, we have removed the prefabs 05 other sets compendium and combined it with the modular buildings compendium to make the modular sets compendium. So now you can find a lot of things all together. For example, all of the towers are now united instead of being split amongst modular buildings and the other sets compendium. So there's one less prefabs compendium to keep track of, which will hopefully make finding things a little bit easier for you. The exact organizational structure of the modular sets compendium and the other compendiums, and also the scenes compendiums, may change slightly. So to have the latest information, make sure you check out the Getting Started playlist and see the entries on importing scenes and importing prefabs. That will have the most up-to-date information on where to find different kinds of scenes and different kinds of prefabs, respectively.
Okay, now with that out of the way, let's jump through the 2D basic release here. We're going to start with the cave room release. All of these rooms are prefabs. Because they're in organic shape, you can really size these in a lot of different ways, and you can do it all through this token, right? So I can make it double the size, and you can actually then have twice the area to battle in, right? And you can make it half the size. You can go in basically 0.5 increments. With each one of these, they typically have some other tiles attached to them. And that's just so that you can make doors. So this is an overhead tile, for example. And that way you can use this as a entrance to another room. That way these things can all just mash up to each other in a lot of different ways. Like this, for example, now I just need to work on changing the walls between the two, and I can basically have players travel from this room to this room, and they'll just go under this overhead tile. I spent a lot of time making sure that we had assets that all were in like kind of visual agreement, right? And it lets you really do a lot with these sets. They all, because they're rock and organic, they all kind of merge together really, really well. So we've got these different kinds of caves. They can all be resized, made larger or smaller. And you can see examples of where we put these, but they all just kind of fit together. You can just grab this over here, drag it over to a place that you want to have a cave. You literally just put one right there, and it works that easily, right? We've just got a cave all of a sudden where there wasn't one. We've got different kinds of platforms. This is a really great set. These cave elevations, they actually come as a prefab, and every single permutation is in the same set. And you have versions with stairs and versions without. And you can see from the sample scenes how much you can do with these. Again, you can size them up and down, but they all just fit together really nicely, and they merge together in a way that you can create any kind of sort of rock meandering paths and other things. And you'll be able to see here some examples of how we can do that. We also have cave ledges. So these are all overhead tiles, but they're all different kinds of ledges, or you could put other tiles on top of them, make them small caves, places where you can hide enemies, right? And again, they all just fit with all of these scenes. You can have just a ledge here now, and your enemies can be hiding on top or underneath it. All of the cave toppers are similar. These are all overhead tiles, right? Just so easy to make doors and have overhead things going on. And it's really fun. Here's an example of, one of our ledges where you can hide an enemy up here. And then you've got these toppers. These stretch down to the floor. So they're actually background tiles, and that's how you want them. You don't want players walking underneath something that stretches to the floor. But these are so flexible. You make them large, small, and they end up creating things like this, where you have this really ominous sense of height, and your players can kind of walk through these choke points where you can really wall them in with these large pieces, and these pieces just kind of merge together, just like anything else in this set, and you can make extended long walls that work really, really well. We've also got webs. We just wanted to redo the webs. These are, again, resizable. They come as foreground tiles here, so your players can walk underneath them, but you'll see examples of how we web things up quite a bit. These are set to occlude in a certain way, but you can change that. You can have them be traps and have players get stuck in them, all sorts of fun stuff with webs, and they just all merge together in really easy ways. You've got various cave platforms. These are just meant to be flat areas that you can just drop into a cave so that you can have encounters or a big bad boss or other things. They do come as a prefab, so when you right click it, you can see all of the different cave options, including the liquid one. This liquid one, of course, is colorable, right? Because of that red, you can change it to something else, right? So if we wanted it to be some kind of murky, cave green, you can certainly do that. You also have cave pillars. These also come as a single prefab. They do have walls. These walls block light but not sight. You can change those. They also block movement. You can change those yourself later. You just drop them in, spam them around. It works great. And then you've got these smaller cave mouths as well. These are set as overhead tiles too, so your players can literally walk into the cave. It's a really nice thing, and they just go on top of any of these pieces, right? I can have a cave sitting here if I want. It merges perfectly in, or I can put my caves up here in any of these scenes as well. Notice with this scene too, I didn't show you, but it's got these little caves hidden around and throughout. This is meant to be a scene where you can hide a bunch of enemies or have them spawn from these little caves that are around this scene, right? There's probably, I don't know, 20 caves hidden in there. Now we also have rubble. This is just super helpful for anything. You just drop the rubble in. It comes as a tile set like this, and you can put rubble anywhere you want. This is great for other scenes as well. If you've used any of my other sets, you always need rubble. You always need dirt piles. So you've got them. And then these overhead tiles, this one's meant to be a bridge, more of like a natural bridge. These are overhead tiles that are meant to be more like natural rocks overhead. But if you right click them, you'll see that you can change them to other kinds. So I'm going to show you how you can make like mines, for example, using these. And then these are just meant to be doorways, right? So if you don't want to use any of these larger overhead pieces, you can, and you just want to be able to make a transition from one cave to the next, you can use these doorways. They're already configured to do exactly that, just like the other ones where they're always visible. They're at height 9.9 from a levels perspective. So as long as you don't have levels active, you can drop these in and they'll work great on just like a single floor scene. Okay, we also have some special tiles. We've got like this rotating fog, which you can just copy and paste into another scene. We've also got this special mat enabled creature sound. And if I have a player walk over it, it'll fire off random sounds, right? So you can come in here and check out how they're made, what sounds that they are firing off, but you can get this to them through the mass edit preset. So if you open up your presets, if you're on your tiles, you can come to Monk's active tiles and you can find random creature sounds. You do have to make sure that you get this from my nuts and bolts compendium. So if you have nuts and bolts, download it. You can drag this out and change some of these parameters if you'd like to, and you get the same exact tile that you can, it's invisible to players, right? It's hidden. And when they walk over it, it'll launch a random sort of cave dwelling sound. This one up here, rotating fog, that's under, if you just type rotating, you can see it's under token magic effects animation. So you can just drag that out and you get this rotating fog that you can resize. And you can use the mass edit preset to change. Continuing on, these are more cave rooms. These are built with all the same components you saw before, right? So these are overhead tiles, and then you've got these beams underneath, and it just creates a very satisfying effect. They all come with sound effects just like the other rooms, but you can see as you're navigating these, they're very large rooms, and the sense of claustrophobia and overhead it just works really great. Of course, you can delete any of those overhead tiles as you like, and then you can create doors and things in any parts of this as you need to. You just need to turn on quick edit mode to edit these pieces, and you can copy this door and place another one over here and you're good to go. You have all these different versions though. I just wanted to give you more to play with. Because they're so organic, you can butt these up to each other in lots and lots of different kinds of ways. And I give you more examples of how you can do that. But they're so flexible. You can take, this and put it up against that one, right? It works that way. It works, just having it go right into there, and you can just take this and move it to the back and make a segue there. It's so flexible. You can make these things really kind of any shape or dimension, you can get really out of control with your cave systems here. Plenty set up to explore and to merge them together and have some really fun battles. And we also have these sounds, most from Michael Gelfi, some from me. Kikimora, some ravens on a loop, a sleeping dragon sound. There's some of the bats that you heard earlier, and then distant thunder. Just really great stuff that you'll see we put to good use in this latest set. And I do include ambient sounds with all of these rooms as well, so you don't have to go hunting it down. Also, as an extension of the caves, I wanted to create ruins. These ruins can sit on the ground or they can sit underground. You'll see examples of both. They connect to each other just as easily as everything else that you saw. So you can really kind of merge things together. You can merge them with the cave rooms that you saw earlier, but they're all just meant to, have an entry point and these changes in elevation, but you've got these like stairs, which imply that, they're ruins. They're very, very old ruins, but you can do a lot of storytelling with these.
All of the skeleton tiles from the Baileywiki Assets A Dungeondraft pack also have tiles in Foundry VTT. These are set up as prefabs you can bring in that utilize Monk's active tile triggers and multi-phase tiles, so pick your favorite. We have several different versions. You can bring in an entire tile pack that allows you to move all these around and see all of them. When you're happy with one, you can simply detach all of the elements and then remove the ones you're not going to use and put the final one in place. And you'll notice that there are drop shadows on all of these. All of these more aerial skeletons, for example, the ones on the posts or on brackets or just hanging, are set up to be kind of their own overhead tiles so that you can add some depth and 3D to the different maps. So all of these are overhead tiles that will always show, so you can walk a character underneath it, which is showcased in the example scenes, and they have the token magic effects tall drop shadow applied, which means when you rotate it, the angle of the shadow is going to remain constant, allowing you to have a nice, easy time of keeping your lighting looking consistent within your maps. With the Monk's Active Tile Triggers integration, you can simply double-click on any of these to cycle between random different images of the various skeletons that are in that set. The all version is going to be random, and then the bracket, post, and hanging versions are going to do next, so you can predictably go through the list here and see what version you want to have on your particular tile here. If you prefer to use multi-phase tiles, you can use the Token Attacher Quick Edit mode, and then you'll need to edit these as the foreground layer, as they are overhead tiles, and then on a right click, you can see the different options here for your tile. Now, it's important to note that multi-phase tiles and Monk's active tile triggers don't talk to each other. So Monk's active tile triggers is going to still think that this is one image. So just keep that in mind if you're mixing and matching the different use cases here, as that may give you unexpected behavior when you switch back to the other. So just keep in mind that you want to probably use only multi-phase tiles or only Monk's active tile triggers when you're changing the images here. Again, these prefabs are available for you to bring out kind of a ready-made version, and you can find those in the new content, and then they will be in the furnishings and special compendium after that in a decor section. If you want to get the exact tiles, we've also got the file path linked on this release scene here for you, so you can go into the Baileywiki Maps Premium Towns module to find the exact tiles, and they are in 256 DPI. So if you want them to be the same relative size shown here, then you'll want to set your asset grid size to that 256.
Now, looking at some of the sample scenes, this is the Ancient Ruins. As usual, you can click on this garbage can to delete all of the notes, but your player basically enters through this area here, and they end up within the ruins. And there's different sort of creative wall setup. I did not try to make things work with elevated vision or anything too fancy. I'm just using some creative uses of walls here. But you basically can navigate through this and do all sorts of stuff. This one is left blank in case you want to come in and change it. But I'm also giving you a couple of versions that are already decorated so that you can really see what else you can do, right? So this one is a place where elves have, taken over, right? So they're maybe occupying maybe it's a former elvish ruin. Conversely, maybe goblins have taken over. So this is the goblin version of this. You've got a lot more fire pits. These are all smart and can be interacted with. All these torches can be snuffed out or turned on. The Broken Altar Shrine features some animated assets. You can see my tutorial to see how you create these or change these or make changes to them. But just a simple overground example of how you can use these assets to create something that is interesting and really good set piece for storytelling. The cave system is an example of us using all of the systems of the cave to, butt them up to each other and create really kind of any shape that we want, right? We feature this, a Monk's Active tile enabled tile that lets you walk over it, and if it's not in its cooldown period, it'll fire some random noises like bats or other things. You can see what the transitions look like when you butt these things up to each other. It's really easy. It's pretty satisfying. I think that's the Kikimora sound from Michael Gelfi. A lot of these sounds are from Michael Gelfi. These are just tiles. You can delete them, make them fire different noises, all sorts of other stuff, right? This one's a very large cave system. This is actually all one tile piece with a bunch of overhead tiles set up to create different kinds of segues and other things between them. But very effective pieces that you can drop in and replace, but your players can navigate around this really complicated system of passageways and caverns and find some cool stuff like this skull that's mysteriously sort of embedded in the rock here. We've applied the web overlay to these, so that's just a Token Magic Effects overlay that lets you web things up, and we use liberal use of the new web overlay. You can find it just by opening up Nuts and Bolts and searching for web, and you do need the premium module for it to work, but you will find the overlay webs randomized here. That's the one that you want. And you can see, I've added webs to, these different tiles, and this just shows you how you can use these tiles to really dress things up. So come in here, move some tiles around and see how this is designed. Keep in mind that a lot of this is interactive. The ruins is three. It's ruins 1, 2, and 3. This is the entrance to the ruins, so your players would navigate to, this kind of stony, rocky area. There's a tower here in the corner that they can climb up into, but as they walk through, this is sort of the entrance to what might be ruins elsewhere. So you can give them some options, have some enemies raining fire down on them, that kind of thing. As they make it further into the ruins, they have this sort of choke point where you've got some ruins that are kind of collapsed down below in the shadow here. You've got some strategic areas up top. You've got this kind of choke point. Some of our skeletons are set up as demonstration, how they can fit into a scene. And you've got like little, wooden platforms and things that might serve well for a skirmish. If your players make it further into the dungeon, then they get into the subterranean area. I do talk about how I created this in the tutorial, but you can come in here and make a really nice little map out of this. It's got lots of overhead tiles with occlusion modes, creative walls. There's a wooden tower here in the corner, just a prefab. You can swap out for other things. And just an overall, just great map to have adventures in. And it's got this just really great fog effect that your players can see as they're navigating around trying to avoid dying. Secret Entrance is just showing you how you can link together these different pieces. This is just one whole switchback. Your players can make it up to the top. And if they get up this far, you, the GM, can click this statue, and the statue will move and reveal this cave behind it. Switchback shows you how you can assemble one of these switchbacks as pieces. So, we're using some creative walls here. Your players enter from this side and they make their way up ultimately to this mouth of this cave right here, right? These are all just tiles that you can change to something else. And if you like how this scene works, you can consolidate all of its tiles into a single tile just using Media Optimizer by Ripper. Temple Entrance comes in 3 different varieties. This is the arcane version, which uses yet different schemes for how we're doing the fog underneath the bridge here, but you've got other animated assets with our skeletons hanging out ominously as your players approach the entrance. Then you've got these large towers flanking either side. Of course, we have the lava version in case you're trying to use the lava versions of all of these maps. Also, what I show you in the tutorial is how you make this, but same type of thing. except different ambiance. And then just to give you an example of how different you can make these, here's an ocean one. You could make a grassy one. You could make lots of different ones. Once you watch my tutorial and you see how I created these backgrounds, really the sky's the limit. And you can do any amount of this animation and things that you see in here. So you can kind of make this your own or make it fit in with whatever story you've got. And of course, if you watch the tutorial, you can see the Gauntlet. It's got these great effects, these lightning and thunder effects. These are all made with pieces. So I can't stress to you enough how flexible this stuff is. You guys can make some crazy stuff. These stone pieces basically make up the positive space, and then everything else is negative space. And so you can create things where you have like chasms and pits and other things. And it just works. So if you've played like Baldur's Gate and you've seen some of the scenes underground, my goal was to be able to create those kinds of things, but do it in 2D. These are all like smart tiles that I'm walking over, and they're firing with cooldowns and stuff, but it gives this really fun effect where this, lightning is just sort of sporadically firing in the background. So hopefully this gives you guys some inspiration on what you can create. And of course, there's a fire version of all of this. So you can see the same thing, but with fire. See how I created it, come in here and recreate it, change it, build something completely new, or extend what I've already started, right? Take this scene, build another one, and put, dwarven settlements in there. I mean, really, the sky's the limit as far as what you guys want to do and how you want to do it.
Hi guys, Swift here again to talk about the 3D section of this month's update. We've got quite a lot of props added this month that I've split into 2 sections. The first part is a refinement and expansion of the Weathered Dungeon tile set, so let's go through that first. This is an update to a previous tile set that we've already had in the 3D module. The original tile set worked fine, but it was a little bit janky and could be a bit tricky to use sometimes. Things occasionally didn't line up perfectly, that sort of thing. So these new versions are a lot more consistent, and you should be able to reliably just snap things together on the grid and assume that things will line up correctly. We've got the same 3 variants of each piece. We've got a kind of pristine one with perfect bricks and all that, a cracked piece with damage on there, and then a mossy piece. We've also expanded the overall selection to include tall pieces that are 3 squares tall, and short walls that are 1 square tall. We've also added more pieces in general, like for example these broken end pieces of the wall are new. The wall pieces overall are pretty self-explanatory. There's various shapes to make various different types of room, and there's, for example, 2 variants of the diagonal walls with the ends at different angles to make inner and outer slanted corners. So overall these should be pretty easy to use. In addition to all that, we've also expanded the stairs quite a bit too. The stairs here are arranged into 1 wide and 2 wide sets, and then organized by type. We've got some simple block stairs for use anywhere, some stairs with edging that should match the walls down at the bottom there, and then also stairs with railings attached to them. We've got several different heights of each variation as well. We've got half high, 1 high, 1.5 high, and 2 high stairs. And since these are all exactly grid square or half grid square sizes, they are all easily snappable together. For example, if I take this staircase and snap it to the top of that staircase, then that lines up perfectly. Or, of course, they'll snap to themselves, like if I took this staircase and then just snapped it on, snapped it on, snapped it on. I could make it as long as I like, without having to do any specific fiddling or anything. Everything just kind of lines up nicely. Something you will want to do if you're using these staircases is opening up the config of whichever one you're using. And in the 3D section, in position, if you turn off auto ground, since by default 3D Canvas tries to align it to the lowest point on the prop, whereas these are better aligned to the top of the staircase there. You can see here the position of this widget here is lined up with that edge. And so that basically means that this will line up perfectly with any floor piece, but obviously you need to turn off auto ground to get that to work correctly. Speaking of stairs, we've also got curved staircases. We've got left and right variants, as well as the same types as there are up there. We've got the basic block type stairs, the stairs with the corridor style trim, and also the stairs with the railings as well. These are too wide, as you can see, though they are quite sort of tight here on the inner side, so I'm not sure you could make a full spiral staircase very easily with these. But something you could do is, say we took a staircase like this and then just added in a straight. Like if I just snap this on there. And then what I could do is snap another curved piece up at the top. And then you could just sort of do this kind of thing up and give yourself loads of room so that you could easily make that spiral as high as you liked. But obviously, you don't have to use it that way. You can just snap them to themselves, and that'll work just fine. Like, for example, if I just put that on that, and there we go. That'll fit together seamlessly. Beside the stairs, we also have a new set of pillars. We've got taller and shorter ones to go with the middle-sized ones that we already had. These should match up nicely to the taller and shorter walls. And what these are great for doing is if there's any gaps in the walls or any like joining points that don't quite look right, you could just put a pillar in there and that'll sort of instantly make it look a little bit nicer. At least I find so. Speaking of a little bit nicer, we've also got an expansion to the doors from before. So you might recognize this second set of door frames here as being very similar to the one that already exists. But we've also got a bare stone arch version now, as well as a version with a sort of narrower frame and with a cage on the top of it. That's designed to be used with this door type thing, along with the new sliding tool that 3D Canvas has. I'll show you those in the next map. So we've got more variants of the normal size walls. What we've also done, I fixed a kind of problem with the previous ones. Used to be that if you tried to line up some walls with them, there would always end up being a gap, and it just didn't quite look right. Whereas now we've got these little sticky outy bits at the top here. So now the door will perfectly line up with any wall on either side, like you can see there. So that should just make things look a little bit nicer. We've also updated the tall versions of the doors. We've got the bare arch version of the door frame and also the door frame version. And then we've got the tall doors have also been refined, split into left and right. And then the pivot point set up so that you should also be able to set these up as doors. Like I've got these set up as an example. There's not really an easy way to get them to both open at the same time, but you can use them just as normal doors. And then, of course, we also have the good old-fashioned standard door. This hasn't really changed because it worked fine before, but obviously I've just kind of included it here so that, you know, this is the door that fits into these ones here. These will also be in the V2 folder, which I'll talk about just now, actually. So, finding this new tile set. All of these props will have names that are quite similar to the old ones. However, each name has been prefixed with V2. Like if I open up this wall here, and we have a look, you'll notice this is V2, mossy 2x2 wall, low straight. So if you use the asset browser and you search, if you look for V2, then you should find all of these things here. And you can also find a V2 folder inside the original folder for the pristine, cracked, and mossy sets. So if you go in manually, that's where they are. Ideally, we would like to replace the old tile set with this new one. However, because a lot of the old tile set would be slightly differently shaped or sized than these, what would end up happening is we would end up breaking a lot of old maps, and that's not really something we like to do. So for the present, the old tile set is still there in the same place and is still perfectly usable. This new V2 set has just been added to that tile set as a kind of extension of it. Maybe at some point we'll figure out a way to kind of update the set without breaking old maps. If we do, I'll let you know. But for now, both tile sets will exist at the same time in the Baileywiki 3D module. Oh, one other thing as well. You might notice there are no floors in here. I've got this one as an example. That's because the old floors work perfectly with it. What you're going to want to do is turn off auto ground on them. Since if you just kind of spawn in a floor and then try to line it up with a wall, it will line up side to side perfectly well. However, it will be too high up, as you can see here. You can't really, it overlaps the floor part of the wall here. So what you need to do is just go into the wall's settings and turn off auto ground. and that will align it to the top of the floor, and that lines up perfectly with that. You might end up getting some flickering or the like if you've got the background on. The ideal solution is either to just disable the background, which you probably will be doing if you're making a dungeon anyway, or just making your dungeon like up half a tile, and that will all line up perfectly. If for whatever reason keeping the background around is something you don't want to do. These new walls should also leave a little bit of extra room on these tiles, since the previous ones were further onto the wall, so there was less kind of space for tokens to move around. This should make things, with dungeons, just a bit easier to navigate. Anyway, that's the first inventory scene of this update more or less covered. So let's go on to the second part. So the next part of the update gets its own inventory scene because it is quite large, or the pieces are rather large even. It's an expansion of the Ancient Castle tile set, and again, a bit of a refinement. You might notice, for example, that these wall pieces over here look a bit familiar. These were previously prefabs that you would use with the prefab compendium with token attacher to bring into the scene and then use. And what they were made out of a central wall piece and then these crenellation pieces, and they were all sort of individual. It gave you a lot of customization, but they were kind of slow and kind of clunky to use. And something we've seen, or something we've been talking to community members about recently, is that people are making really huge castle maps, and the bigger the map, the kind of slower and less responsive things that token attacher got. So they asked if we could, do more prefabs. So what we've done is created these as single individual tiles. So technically, they're slightly less flexible than the old ones. However, they are much easier to use. You can just move them around, rotate them freely, scale them as you like, same as any other tile, and they should be a lot snappier to use. We've also added in some more kind of ruined pieces as well, just for a bit of extra flavour. Something else we've done is all these huge towers, as you can see here. So originally with this update, the difficulty with all these towers was, if you wanted to be able to move a token inside a tower and then use the interior of the tower at all, then the tower would have to be made into different parts and then split up using levels and then configured correctly on a map-by-map basis. And it was fairly complicated and hard to use, so there weren't many towers in the original release. However, now that Ripper has added the clipping shader to 3D Canvas, all we need to do is enable the clipping shader on this tower, for instance, set it up, and then if I move this token inside the tower, for instance, you can see here that the tower is just clipped away. So there's no need to do anything fancy with levels or settings or anything like that, anything that might take you a while to set up. You just need to put a shader on the tower and then it's ready to use, and you can use the interior just as easily as you would use the exterior. So that's made things like making these towers a lot easier because they are much simpler. And subsequently, as you've probably noticed, they are individual tiles. So again, you can just move them around as you like, rotate them as you like, rescale them as you like. All the things you can do with normal tiles. Much quicker and easier to use. And probably quite importantly, should be less laggy as well, because a lot of the maps that I've been seeing from the community are huge. So having a map full of these should hopefully be a little bit smoother and easier to run than a big scene filled with very complex pieces. Speaking of, let's just go through them really quickly here. We've got some octagonal towers here with varying different roofs or lack of roof, as you can see with this one here. We've also got some round towers with these conical roofs, which we've also got on the hexagonals, the octagonal ones even. We've also got some very large square towers that are just much bigger than the other ones. And then we've also got things like the gatehouse that you might remember from the previous update, except it is just a single tile, much easier to use. A standalone version of the gatehouse buildings, and then also just a larger version of the gatehouse building for your larger gate needs. Similar to the weathered tile set thing, these are in addition to the previous tile set, so nothing's getting replaced. We definitely don't want to break anybody's maps if they've used older stuff of ours, and also that means that you can have all of these individual buildings that are already ready-made, and also have all the pieces to make your own intricately detailed custom buildings, so you can, add your own personal flair to any given map, and it'll fit in perfectly with these tiles. On a related note, if there's anything that you would think would make building said castles easier, then let us know, either in the comments or in the Discord like always. Ideas for that sort of thing are always something we're looking for. For now, though, let's take a quick look at some of these month's 3D maps. The first one we've got here is the Crossover Dungeon, made using the new refined weathered tile set. We've got the classic door back outside to start us off. Presumably the party are coming down from the surface here. And of course, the first room they'll encounter when they come into the dungeon is the guard room, of course. Beyond that, we've got a wide corridor with curved corners, one door of which will lead to this bridge room, which we'll get to in a minute, and the other being a curved staircase that'll take them up to the living quarters of the guards. And this room here could potentially be quite a large encounter, depending on when they arrive. Off to the side of the guard quarters, we've got the alchemy lab and living quarters of whoever it is that's calling the shots around here, as well as a secret room with some treasure chests in there, and new sliding door tech used to make the secret door. So that slides up and down nice and easily there. Very good. And both of these paths converge into this bridge room here. So the lower path leads into that door that leads deeper into the dungeon and off the map. The upper one crossing overhead here. So if the party wants to get up here, they could go round, of course, or they could try to climb up on these ledges here, though that might be difficult if they've got enemies attacking them from on top of the bridge. On the far side of the bridge, we've got the prison, which has this blood-stained altar in the center of the room, some alchemical equipment over in the corner here, and then these 3 cells here, using that new sliding door tech for the cell doors, as you can see. Those slide down or back up. So this room might contain someone the party is here to rescue, or they could be surprised by the presence of the prison here, and this could end up being either a side room with no one in it if the party has managed to sneak in, or it could end up being the climactic confrontation of this floor. Overall, though, a fairly straightforward dungeon, using a little bit of verticality here. As requested, we've also got a unfurnished version of the crossover dungeon. So we had a few comments previously on some of our maps that some maps it would be really convenient if they could get a blank version so they could fill it with their own stuff. So we've obviously got that here. This map does still have some lights in it to give it this sort of dark blue tint to the whole place, but you could of course delete those as well, or even just kind of completely change the lighting by, changing the lighting to day and that sort of thing. But obviously, it's up to whoever ends up using this map here. We've just got this nice blank canvas for you to create your own adventures in. Next up, we've got the Landslide Castle, using some of the castle pieces from this month's update. And this one here is, as you can probably guess, a castle that's had a landslide a long time ago that's taken out some of the wall, and then parts of it have just crumbled as well. Something this map is also using is a combination of some of the tools that have been in here before. For example, we're using the gradient shader here to give the lower parts of the map this kind of greenish grass texture, and then the upper parts here, where the landslide has been, this kind of rocky earth texture. And then we've also used the splat map editing tool that's in 3D Canvas now to paint on a dirt road that comes through into this sort of open area in the middle here, and also to paint some rocky earth around the walls as well, just to kind of give the impression of more rubble that's kind of around these ruined walls. Overall, though, another very straightforward map. Not the most defensible position, what with the ruined walls, but with this open position in the centre here, a great place for some kind of encounter, or indeed for a party camp. Likewise, we've got a night version of the Landslide Castle. This one's got a couple of braziers up on the walls, and then just the new dynamic sky system that Ripper has added to 3D Canvas. This is something you can do if you go to the settings of a scene. There'll be a button for opening the dynamic sky configuration, and then you can do stuff like this here, where you can set how many stars there are, what sort of cloud cover there is. And one of the coolest things about this is if we open up the environment thing here, if we set the time to day, then the sky will transition to a daytime sky, which I think is very cool. So you can just sort of control what's going on with this, just with the time of day slider there. Something we've also done for this map, as you probably noticed on the other one, is using the height map for the maps around out here. So, down from the ground, the surrounding terrain lifts up so the horizon's a little bit closer, which just makes things look a bit better, I think. Next up, we've got the Hillside Ruins, and this is the first map by Sevro that he's added into our Baileywiki map pack here, and it's a pretty damn good one, if I do say so. As you can see here, we've got this ruin path leading in from off-map, and then up into this ruin complex built on the side of a hill. We've got stairs leading up, ruined sections of various buildings here across the map, as well as these statues on these plinths dotted around the place, which would presumably have some sort of import. This is the kind of map that you could really dot with all sorts of encounters and have some really varied terrain for different types of combat. Like, for example, have some ranged enemies up here behind these half walls, looking down on the party as they come up here into this area with limited cover. Or things like things coming up from under the bridge or down from above it. And then right at the back, we've also got this tower structure here that I think is pretty cool. We've got a spiral staircase around the outside of it. And this is all using stuff from the Ancient Castle tile set as well. Overall, though, I really rather like this one here. This is also using the new dynamic sky, so you can see in the sky above here the variation on it, how it's quite different to the one we had on the last map. And what we've also got is a nighttime version of the map here. So it's got torches all over the place, lighting the place up with this nice orange light. We've got the nighttime dynamic sky overhead, giving it a really nice kind of middle of nowhere vibe to it, with all the sort of perfect vision of the sky. And again, lots of possibilities for tactical engagements all over this map, really. That's one of the things I quite like about it, really. It's just that there are a lot of places here with interesting arrangements of a battle map. The next map we'll take a look at is the Rock Canyon by Violet this time. This is another desert map here with some very large animated birds flying overhead, casting some rather cool shadows down on the map. I think you could either have these things flying directly overhead where the players can see them, or you might think about lifting them up higher as well, if you don't want them to be directly visible, but you still want them casting shadows. We're also using the height map setting on the padding around the map here. You can see that the actual edge of the map is around about here, but beyond that we have the padding terrain with a sand texture on it, and then we've applied a height map to it so that it looks like these rolling dunes stretching off into the distance. And we've also got the dynamic sky with no clouds whatsoever. So you've got the desert sun beating down on you as you move through this canyon. It's very atmospheric. Overall, though, a good encounter map here. I like that we've got this corner in the middle so that you can't just see from the start to the end. You could round this corner and be surprised by something else that's in the canyon. You've also got a variant of this map with a sandstorm that reduces the visibility quite a lot, and there's particles flying about and all that sort of thing. Another very cool use of the fog mechanic here. Instead of keeping it black, making it sort of sandy coloured. And then we've got this really atmospheric effect on this same map here. So depending on when the party get to it, they could either have perfect visibility and the sun beating down on them, or this sort of darker, hazier version of the map here, if they get here just in time for there to be a sandstorm. And the third map from Violet we'll be looking at today is this Volcano map. Now this one's rather cool. We've got these glowing pools of lava down below. Very obviously dangerous. This kind of lumpy terrain around it looks quite treacherous here. And then in the distance, probably not all that visible to the players, depending on what you do with the lighting setup, we've got these surrounding mountains. They kind of look straight out of Morrowind, really, with some of the wasteland terrain in the central parts of that island. But this map is very cool. I think every campaign needs at least one encounter in the caldera of a volcano. And you could use this for any sort of boss fight, really, with a sort of fire-themed enemy. Maybe there's something coming out of the lava. Or maybe you're just fighting something along the sides of the caldera here, trying not to fall in. Either way, very exciting. I will wrap that up now, though, before things go on for too long. So this month, the main things we've got are the big expansion and refinement of the weathered tile set for making all sorts of dungeons, and the expansion to the large structures of the ancient castle tile set that should hopefully make making those huge castles that people seem to enjoy making much easier and just much more smooth. As ever, questions, comments, and that sort of thing are greatly appreciated. So if you have any of those, leave them down in the comments below or message us on the Discord. For now, though, I'll see you guys later.
Okay, so the Dungeondraft release is massive. There's so many pieces. And these are all just shrunk down so you can see them all in one scene. But there's so much to play with that it's probably too big for one release. You guys are going to be playing with this for months. But you've got all these stone croppings, and these all just fit together and mash up in really easy ways. And you can just create so many things with all these stone pieces. You've got all of the rubble pieces, including some of these fun kind of transparent pieces if you want to put like these square pits somewhere. This moss is so flexible. You just you know deploy it usually with your scatter tool, and then you give it some kind of like really subtle color. Like let's do this. Let's drop its opacity down. And these things work really well to spam anywhere. It's probably too little opacity. Let's increase it a little bit. And like just with no effort at all, you've added moss to, to your rocks. And you can just have it grab the rock in any kind of organic way that it seems normal. And it's just very, very effective. You've got different dirt paths. The edges, you've got this combined path and this other one. Remember, you can always just click on these in these inventory scenes. If you're using Essential Utils mod, you can look at which asset pack it's in and what it's called. We've got all these natural stairs that are all designed to go with all the other natural pieces. So you can put stairs on top of stone. We have all these gems, geodes, and crystals now. If you guys didn't notice these before, some of you noticed that I was testing these last month, but you can change all of them to different colors. And it's just very, very easy to use these. I won't go through all of Zephyr's stuff in his release. He'll go through that in a second, but you've got like mimics and skeletons and all sorts of fun stuff. These are all the ways that I made the kit bash things. These are actually all now assets as well. So you can look up the tags and you can go in and look up these assets, but this is how I created them in Dungeondraft, and I just made tiles out of them. So these cave mouths, for example, if you just search cave, you can see this is that asset. It's the exact same thing, but you can see how I made that and kit bashed it by coming in here. It's just other components put together. I just wanted to be able to educate you on how I make these so you can make your own. I even made a wall and paths. Right, so if you come in here and you search for cave path, you have these really great paths that you can design really organically. Well, it was made with all of these pieces just in this row here and then cut out and turned into a path. So I want you guys to see some of my process so you can see how to create your own things eventually as well. You've got all of your toppers, pillars, platforms, ledges, and everything that makes this whole system work. And then you got all these components too, right? So these are your ruins, right? And you can see, how these are designed, and you can see like all the pieces of moss and other things that make these things work. It's really important to use lighting around these so you can really show what the top of something is versus something down below. So, you want to come in here and see how I do the lighting. Oops, go to my select tool. So you can see how I light up top surfaces and how I make it obvious sort of what the top is, what the bottoms are. Here's all of the cave rooms and how they were designed, all the different pieces. Come in here and check these out, deconstruct them, see some of the other tools that I've used, other packs like the artificial pack. So these webs in action. Here's different versions of all of those rooms. It's kind of the alternative versions of them. And then I took all these pieces and I mashed them together in Dungeondraft. And that's how I created some of the scenes that you saw in Foundry. I just made a single map out of this. I exported it and that became a sort of a base map for Foundry. And this just uses the prefabs of a lot of the pieces I just showed you. Here's another really large map. This is also in Foundry if you watch that part of the release video. And these are all just pieces butted up against each other in a way that I can then just in Foundry make transition walls. And I've created this huge network with very, very little effort at all. Here's some more cave rooms. These are enclosed, right? Like you saw with the Foundry release. Different ways of using all the assets together. And these are some of those elevation pieces, right? This is the laboratory I used to make some of those elevation pieces. And with that, we'll segue over to Zephyr to talk about the last kind of part 2 of the Dungeondraft release.
New to the Baileywiki assets, a Dungeondraft pack, we have the expansion of a few existing areas, and then also the addition of skeletons, awnings, and a new type of tent. With the skeletons, we have a variety of hanging skeletons that you can mount on walls, spikes, or whatever else you so fancy. And all of these have colorable versions, whether that is for the bones on the smaller guys or on the equipment on those that seem to have lost their lives with their gear. Additionally, there are bracket versions for either holding up above something or holding onto a wall, and post versions. There are 2 versions of metal posts, with kind of a rusted look and a more green and patinaed or mossy look, and then a wooden version. And all of those have colorable aspects as well. And of course, we have a sitting skeleton to languish in your dungeons, serving as a reminder to your party why they should not trifle with your villains. We have a small expansion to the cave faces from last month's release, and this is a collection of vertical faces that you can use to great effect by varying the angles and scale to really give that creepy vibe to the rest of your cave if you're leveraging some of those faces on the floor. Speaking of creepy, we have our very first Mimic. So with the Mimic, we have just one design for right now, and then it comes in 2 varieties of colorable. You have this great chest right here, and then you can color the chest while you have a slightly more sickly mouth, or you can color the mouth while leaving the chest the same. Then we also have a new large tent. And when I say large, I mean it. This is in half size. So we have 3 components here. We have the full oval tent as a composite available in 2 patterns. And then all of that is also separable, so you can place just the walls or just the roof to create your overhead scenes. And they are available in colorable versions where you'll change the entire fabric or change the striping on the cloth. The tents also go along with a massive new addition of awnings. So these are fantastic for adding little subroofs, creating market stalls, etc. And there are a wide variety of different shapes, as you can see. Every piece is going to have a plain version, a striped pattern version, and a kind of designed pattern version. And these are going to be versions A, B, and C. And all of those have ripped and colorable versions as well. And just like that tent, these are pretty big, and these are actually in half size. So you can have pretty big awnings with all of these, or you can scale them down to suit your needs. And as you can see, they are quite colorable and they look really good if we do say so. You can find all of these different assets under the tags that have been showing on your screen as we've discussed them. And you can review those in our changelog document where we have all of the tags laid out as well. And of course, you can just explore within the Baileywiki Dungeondraft Assets APAC to find those. As always, let us know what you think about these new assets and what assets you'd like to see us work on next.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this release. This was a lot of fun to put together. I've got so many ideas and things that I want to design and build with this. I hope it's done the same for you. Thanks everybody for all your support, for the channel, for supporting us on Patreon. We really couldn't do this without you. You help us push the boundaries of VTT every day. And with that, I hope you enjoy these assets. I hope you enjoy doing all this design work, and I hope you enjoy and have fun making your maps.